Well, hello, I am Will, and this is a handout on analogies. And there are going to be two videos on this, or on analogies in general, I think. And the first one is going to be about the basics, so we're just going to box in the word basics. And then it's about analogical reasoning. So just to give like a quick rundown, really quick, oh, a little too far. Starting here, this just lets you know it's like a warning sign that this is not somehow comprehensive enough to supplement the lectures and the readings, so it pretty much just assumes that you've done all those already. And if you haven't, then I would go back and do that and then watch this video. So that's kind of what the first paragraph's about. So here, this is where we really get started. And remember at the beginning of the class, the beginning of the course, I should say, we talked about two different types of reasoning. We talked about deductive and inductive, right? And so here, analogical reasoning concerns itself with inductive arguments in general. And kind of what that means is that there's no claim about certainty. And if you just recall very quickly the definition of a deductively valid argument, you'll realize that in the deductive case, I mean, we're talking about the absolute certainty of the conclusion following, and the truth of the premises guaranteeing the truth of the conclusion based on the structure or logical words in the premises. And inductive reasoning doesn't do that, and especially in the analogical reasoning. So just kind of keep that in mind, and I think I kind of like wrote that maybe like right here. There's no claim about certainty, so just try to be very, very mindful of that as you go through this. And we really, it's kind of abstract to think about this stuff, but an analogical argument is still an argument, so you're going to have some premises that purport to support the conclusion, right? So then what happens is this criteria right here, or these 6 rules, become very, very important to that. And so if you just look here abstractly, let's say we have premise 1, premise 2, premise 3, and we're supposed to have a conclusion that follows from those. The conclusion is supposed to follow with some degree of probability, right? So it's like probability. I'm just going to write that, or some loose notion of inductive reasoning, right? And so there's a relationship between the premises on this line and the conclusion. And, when you add information, let's say you add, premise 4 over here. Say we add that premise 4. You're going to be asking the question, does premise 4 make this conclusion right here? Does it make it more likely or less likely to follow? That's what you're always asking: more likely or less. And so when you think about that, when you add in your exercises, you're going to add a premise to a scenario or a set of premises, and you're going to determine whether or not that makes the conclusion more or less likely, or weaker, or stronger. Those are the words you're going to see a lot, so I'd focus on there. Does it make the conclusion weaker or stronger? And that's kind of code for saying, does it make it more likely or less likely the conclusion follows? And so what happens is when you add premise 4, this premise right here, you're going to use these rules over here to determine how it affects this conclusion and whether it makes it stronger or weaker. And that's what these rules are really for. They're like a criteria for evaluating additional information. And other arguments. So, for our purposes, I think that we should focus on, when you have an analogy or when you have an argument, whether or not adding some information makes it more or less likely. Now, Eli does a very beautiful job of pointing out, kind of how loose this type of reasoning is, and it's not deductive reasoning, and so it's loose. It's a looser kind of way of talking about how we reason. So those are the basics. We just have these 6 rules, and they help us determine whether or not when we add extra information to an analogical argument, whether or not it makes the conclusion more or less likely, or has no effect whatsoever. So there's another word I left out there, but neither makes it stronger or weaker. Would be another option to think about. So those are the basics, and see you in the next video.